I had entered the store with a simple shopping list, groceries, toiletries, and maybe a new book to keep me entertained during the upcoming weekend. Walmart had always been my go-to store for its convenience and low prices. The familiar scent of cleaning products mixed with the faint aroma of freshly baked bread welcomed me as I strolled past the automatic doors. The store was unusually busy that evening, and a sense of restlessness hung in the air. Shoppers shuffled past me, their faces buried in their phones or lost in their own thoughts. It wasn't long before I noticed that something was off. An unsettling feeling gnawed at the pit of my stomach. I tried to shake off my unease, chalking it up to my overactive imagination. I continued down the fluorescent-lit aisles, checking items off my list. Canned vegetables, check. Toothpaste, check. As I headed towards the books section, I couldn't help but notice that the overhead speakers seemed to emit a faint, discordant hum. I perused the bookshelves, lost in a world of fiction, hoping to escape the growing sense of unease that had settled in the pit of my stomach. The books seemed to blur together as I absent-mindedly scanned the titles. That's when I noticed him, a man standing a few feet away, his eyes locked onto me. I tried to dismiss it as a coincidence at first, assuming he was simply browsing the same section. But when I shifted my gaze to another shelf, his presence seemed to draw closer. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching me, studying my every move. I decided to move away from the books and make my way to another part of the store, convinced that I was just being paranoid. As I rounded the corner, I glanced back, and my heart skipped a beat. The man was following me, his expression an unsettling mix of determination and malice. Panic surged through me as I quickened my pace, weaving through the aisles, hoping to lose him in the crowded store. But no matter how many twists and turns I made, he stayed hot on my heels. My heart raced, and my palms grew clammy. The once familiar Walmart had transformed into a menacing maze, and I was the prey in some twisted game. Desperation welled up inside me as I realized that I needed help. I glanced around, searching for a store employee, but they were nowhere in sight. The other shoppers seemed oblivious to the tense situation unfolding before them. I needed a plan, and fast. I decided to head towards the checkout lanes, hoping to find a cashier who could intervene. As I approached, I spotted a cashier waving me over. Relief washed over me as I approached her, eager to escape the relentless pursuer. "Is everything okay, sir?" she asked with genuine concern, noticing the fear in my eyes. I whispered, "There's a man following me. I don't know what he wants, but I'm scared." The cashier immediately alerted a security guard, who radioed for assistance. I could feel the man's presence behind me, looming closer, his footsteps quickening. The security guard arrived just in time, blocking the man's path and demanding an explanation. The man's response was a sinister smile that sent shivers down my spine. He muttered something about a misunderstanding and attempted to retreat, but the security guard wasn't having it. He detained the man and called the police. As I watched the police officers take the man away in handcuffs, a sense of relief washed over me. The nightmare was finally over, and I couldn't help but be grateful for the quick response from the store employees and law enforcement. They had prevented a potentially dangerous situation from escalating. The police questioned me about the incident, and I provided a statement detailing the man's actions and my own fear. They assured me that they would investigate the matter thoroughly. Walking out of the store that night, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions: relief, fear, and gratitude. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow, every unfamiliar face, seemed like a potential threat. I had nightmares about the man who had followed me through the aisles of Walmart, his sinister smile haunting my dreams. I decided to seek the help of a therapist to cope with the trauma of the experience. Talking through my feelings and fears with a professional proved to be immensely helpful. The therapist helped me understand that it was natural to feel anxious after such a harrowing encounter and provided me with strategies to manage my anxiety. Weeks turned into months, and slowly but surely, I began to regain my sense of security. I returned to my normal routine, though I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease whenever I entered a Walmart. The once familiar store had become a symbol of the terrifying ordeal I had endured. Over time, I learned to trust my instincts and prioritize my safety. I became more aware of my surroundings and took precautions when shopping alone. I also made an effort to avoid crowded stores during peak hours, opting for quieter times when there were fewer people around. While I may never fully shake off the memory of that fateful night at Walmart, I refuse to let it control my life. Instead, I use it as a reminder to always be vigilant and prioritize my safety. And though the scars of that experience will always remain, I am determined to move forward, knowing that I am stronger for having faced my fears head-on. It was a gloomy, overcast evening when the events I'm about to recount unfolded. I was a young boy of about 10 years old, wide-eyed and innocent, oblivious to the dark side of the world. My family and I lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood, where nothing much ever seemed to happen. But that fateful night at Walmart would forever change my perspective on life. The day had started like any other. My parents, my younger sister Lily, and I piled into our car for our weekly grocery shopping trip to Walmart. It was a ritual we had grown accustomed to, and I, being the elder brother, often took on the role of the family protector, even if only in my imagination. As we entered the sprawling Walmart, the fluorescent lights overhead cast a sterile glow on the linoleum floors. The place was bustling with people, the incessant chatter of shoppers, and the squeak of shopping carts creating a cacophony that filled the air. We began our routine of navigating the crowded aisles, filling our cart with the usual household essentials. While my parents were engrossed in comparing the prices of canned goods, I decided to wander off to the toy section, my favorite part of any Walmart visit. There was always something new to discover, and I was on a quest to find the latest action figures. As I scoured the shelves for my favorite heroes, my surroundings slowly faded into the background. The bright colors of the toy packaging and the enticing displays drew me in, making me forget the world outside those shelves. That's when I first noticed him, a man in his late 30s or early 40s, lurking nearby. He looked out of place amidst the toys, his disheveled appearance and unshaven face standing in stark contrast to the cheerful atmosphere of the aisle. What struck me as odd was that he seemed to be watching me, his eyes fixed on my every move. Unease began to creep over me, like a shadow that darkened my heart. I glanced around, searching for the reassuring sight of my parents, but they were nowhere in sight. Panic gnawed at me as I realized I had ventured far from our initial location. The aisle was empty now, and it was just the strange man and me. Desperation welled up inside me, and I decided to make a hasty retreat, clutching a random action figure in my hand as a feeble excuse to leave. But as I turned to go, the man stepped closer, blocking my path. His presence was suffocating, and my heart pounded in my chest like a trapped bird. "Hey there, little buddy," he said, his voice dripping with an unsettling friendliness. "I couldn't help but notice you're all alone here. Where are your mommy and daddy?" I tried to muster up the courage to respond, but my voice came out as a squeak. Fear had paralyzed me, and I could only manage to mumble something incomprehensible. I clutched the action figure tighter, its plastic edges digging into my palm. The man took another step closer, invading my personal space. His breath reeked of stale cigarettes and something far more sinister. My heart raced, and every instinct told me to run, but I was frozen in place. "I think it would be best if you came with me," he said, his tone becoming increasingly menacing. "We can find your parents together, buddy. What do you say?" My mind was a whirlwind of terror, and I knew I had to escape this stranger's grasp. In one desperate move, I dropped the action figure and bolted down the aisle, zigzagging through the maze of toys. I could hear his footsteps behind me, closing in, and his menacing laughter echoing through the aisles. I sprinted toward the nearest store employee I could find, a middle-aged woman stacking boxes on a shelf. Tears streamed down my face as I gasped for breath, my heart pounding like a drum. The woman looked alarmed at the sight of a terrified child and the approaching stranger. "What's wrong, sweetie?" she asked, her motherly instincts kicking in. I couldn't speak coherently, so I pointed at the approaching man. He skidded to a stop, a veneer of innocence suddenly plastered across his face. "Is this your son, ma'am?" he asked, feigning concern. The employee narrowed her eyes and instinctively stepped between us, shielding me from his view. "I don't know what's going on here, but I suggest you leave," she said firmly. The man's face contorted with anger, but he backed away, realizing he had lost the upper hand. Without another word, he disappeared into the labyrinthine aisles of the store. The employee knelt down beside me, offering a comforting smile. "You did the right thing, sweetheart. Always remember, if a stranger makes you uncomfortable, find an adult you trust and tell them." She radioed for security, and before long, my parents arrived, panic etched on their faces. I clung to my mother, sobbing as I recounted the terrifying encounter with the stranger in the toy aisle. The store security personnel reviewed the surveillance footage, but the man had managed to slip away before they arrived. They called the police, and an officer took my statement. Despite my fear, I described the man to the best of my ability, hoping that it might help them identify him. The incident cast a dark shadow over the remainder of our Walmart visit that day. We hurried through the rest of our shopping, my parents gripping my hands tightly as we navigated the aisles. The store felt like a labyrinth of potential dangers, and my once-beloved toy section now held only haunting memories. When we finally left Walmart that evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that the stranger might still be out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for his next victim. The experience had left an indelible mark on my young mind, a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked in the world, even in the most ordinary of places. As the weeks passed, the incident at Walmart became a frequent topic of conversation at home. My parents emphasized the importance of vigilance and taught me about the dangers of talking to strangers. They assured me that I had done the right thing by seeking help from the store employee. The police continued their investigation, but the man remained elusive. It was a disheartening realization that he might never be apprehended, but I clung to the hope that my description would one day lead to his capture. Years went by, and I grew older, but the memory of that night never faded. It served as a constant reminder of the darkness that could lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. I became more cautious, always mindful of my surroundings, and encouraged my sister, Lily, to do the same as she grew older. In the end, the incident at Walmart had a profound impact on my life, shaping me into a vigilant and aware individual. It was a harsh lesson in the reality of the world, one that I would never forget. And although the man who had terrorized me that night was never brought to justice, I hoped that my story might serve as a warning to others, a reminder to always be on guard and to trust our instincts when it came to our safety. My name is Daniel, and I used to work the graveyard shift at a Walmart store in a small town called Rivertown. The locals often referred to it as the creepy Walmart, and I never fully understood why until one fateful night that would forever haunt my memories. I had been on the job for about 6 months, and while the mundane routines of restocking shelves and dealing with the occasional odd customer could be tiresome, it was the stories from my coworkers that really kept things interesting. They all had their own tales of strange occurrences, but I had never experienced anything out of the ordinary until that night. It was a chilly autumn evening, and the moon cast eerie shadows across the empty parking lot as I pulled into work. I waved to Frank, the elderly security guard, as I entered the store. He always had a collection of ghost stories to share but never took them too seriously. Little did I know, that night would change everything. The store was almost empty, save for a few late-night shoppers, when I began my shift. I started in the electronics section, tidying up the rows of televisions and game consoles. The eerie silence was only broken by the faint hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. My only company was the distant chatter of my coworkers on the store intercom. As the hours dragged on, I felt an unshakable sense of unease. It was as if the walls themselves were watching me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It wasn't long before strange things started happening. The first sign that things were amiss came when I heard a child's laughter echoing through the empty aisles. I froze, peering down the dimly lit rows of toys, but there was no one there. I chalked it up to my imagination playing tricks on me, but that unease still gnawed at me. A little later, I was in the frozen food section when I heard it again, the faint laughter of a child. This time, I followed the sound, my heart pounding in my chest. It led me to the toy aisle, where a row of creepy dolls sat on the shelves. One of them was laughing uncontrollably, its eyes glowing eerily in the dim light. I quickly shut it off, shuddering at the sight. I decided to take a break, hoping that some fresh air would clear my head. As I walked towards the employee break room, I couldn't help but notice Frank standing near the entrance, staring at something with a look of sheer terror on his face. I rushed over to see what had spooked him. "Frank, what's going on?" I asked. He turned to me, his eyes wide with fear. I saw a figure, Daniel, a shadowy figure, lurking near the back of the store. It was inhuman. I tried to calm him down, thinking he might be exaggerating, but the genuine fear in his eyes was unsettling. We decided to check it out together, heading towards the back of the store. As we approached the stockroom area, the lights flickered ominously. The temperature dropped, and a sense of dread hung in the air. It was then that we saw it, a tall, shadowy figure moving between the aisles of storage shelves. Frank gripped my arm, his voice trembling. "That's it, Daniel. That's what I saw." The figure seemed to sense our presence and turned to face us. It had no discernible features, just a black void where its face should be. I felt a surge of panic, but we couldn't look away. In a bone-chilling whisper, it spoke, "You should not be here." With those words, the lights in the stockroom went out completely, plunging us into pitch darkness. We fumbled for our flashlights, but when the beams pierced the blackness, the figure was gone. Frank and I quickly retreated, our hearts racing. We knew we had encountered something beyond explanation, something that defied the laws of reality. We decided not to investigate any further and returned to the relative safety of the store's front. As the night wore on, the strange occurrences continued. Shelves rattled on their own, products mysteriously rearranged themselves, and unsettling whispers echoed through the empty store. It felt like we were trapped in a nightmare. Finally, as dawn approached, the activity subsided, and the sun's first rays pierced through the windows, bathing the store in light. Frank and I breathed sighs of relief, grateful to have made it through the night. To this day, I can't explain what we encountered at that creepy Walmart. I quit my job shortly after that night, unable to shake the feeling of dread that lingered in the store. Frank, too, retired from his post as a security guard, never wanting to set foot in that place again. Rivertown's creepy Walmart remained an enigma, a place where the lines between reality and the supernatural blurred, and a place I'll never forget, a haunting reminder that some mysteries are better left unsolved.